Section 83B. First of all, we need to understand, before we explain 83B, we need to understand restricted stock. Okay? The way that restricted stock works is that you will receive a certain amount of shares that vest over a period of time, and every time they vest, they will show up in your income. Okay? And that could be over the course of 4 years. All right? So if you are someone that's receiving shares from a brand new company, it might not be that big of a deal that they're showing up in your income. Could be a few $1,000s. You pay tax on that, even though you can't sell that stock because it's still private. But let's say that the company becomes a unicorn. You're working at Peloton, you're working at Airbnb, you're working at Palantir, somewhere where the company's trajectory just explodes and the value goes up a ton over the course of just a few years. I guess with Palantir that was like 20 years. But what could happen is that when those shares vest, it wasn't previously an issue because the value of those shares wasn't that much, but now you've got sometimes 6 figures of income showing up on your income tax return. You're paying taxes on them, but you can't sell these shares because you're not public yet. One solution for that is what's called an 83B election. So right at the beginning, at the grant, when you first were awarded that restricted stock, you can elect to accelerate those 4 years of vest, the value of all those, it could be $10,000 now, into or onto the current year tax return into the current year, and you pay taxes on them now, so that when they become a unicorn, you don't have to worry about all of that income showing up for an illiquid position that could potentially, bankrupt you, put you on an installment agreement with the IRS. You owe the IRS money, you can't pay it. 83B prevents all that by accelerating income. The risk is that you accelerate all that income onto your tax return that year, and then yes, the value goes down, or you get fired, it happens, and you've paid taxes on a bunch of shares that are never going to vest for you because you've been terminated. Yeah. So you can't get that money back if that happens.
Also with an 83B election, it's really important to make the election within 30 days of the grant. It's so valuable that the IRS has put very strict limits on it. It's not available at any point. It's when you get the grant, call up your accountant and have them file the 83B election right away. We're writing a letter to the IRS to let them know that, hey, we are making this election. We're paying taxes now. Don't bother us in the future.
It's also, it's more of a niche thing, but it's also available for incentive stock options to accelerate the alternative minimum tax that could be exposed to on those ISO. It's pretty rare. We don't see that very often, but it comes up. So,
yeah. It's risky to pay tax ahead of the time that it is actually due, but a lot of times a successful 83B election can pay off quite nicely.
Yeah, it's another reason why having dry powder or cash laying around to handle your equity compensation is really valuable. Because if you can't afford the 83B, pay all that tax, accelerate that tax now, then you could be exposed to some really dire consequences in the future.